working to connect a region of over 600 cultural bridges between our lands.
Hello, I'm Alma Angeles and you're watching ASEAN in Focus. On today's headlines. Rescuers are searching for more than a dozen patients and staff trapped beneath the rubble of a hospital that was flattened when a powerful earthquake rocked Indonesia's Sulawesi island, killing at least 26 people now. The country has secured another 17 million doses of coronavirus disease vaccines from British, Swedish pharmaceutical and biopharmaceutical firm AstraZeneca. A Cambodian court resumes hearings of a mass trial of around 150 Cambodian opposition figures despite UN raising concerns that the proceedings are politically motivated and violated due process. And the women's badminton world number one, Tai Tzu Ying, breezed into the quarterfinals of the Thailand Open, sweeping aside South Korea's Kim Gae-yoon. At least 26 people have been killed in an earthquake that rocked Indonesia's Sulawesi island early Friday, leveling a hospital and severely damaging other buildings, according to authorities. The latest information we have is that 26 people are dead, all in Mamuju City, according to Ali Rahman, head of the local disaster mitigation agency. He said that number could grow, but he said they hope it won't. Many of the dead are buried under rubble. The country's search and rescue agency confirmed that at least one hotel had collapsed after the quake struck at 2:18 a.m. local time Friday. Now, the epicenter was 36 kilometers south of Mamuju, the capital of West Sulawesi, and the quake had a depth of 18 kilometers, according to the United States Geological Survey. Indonesia experiences frequent seismic and volcanic activity due to its position on the Pacific Ring of Fire, where tectonic plates collide. In 2018, a 7.5 magnitude quake and a subsequent tsunami in Palu on Sulawesi Island left more than 4,300 people dead or missing. On December 26, 2004, a 9.1 magnitude earthquake struck off the coast of Sumatra and triggered a tsunami that killed 220,000 throughout the region, including around 170,000 in Indonesia, and we'll give you more updates as we follow this developing story. In other news, the country has secured another 17 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines, this time from British, Swedish pharmaceutical and biopharmaceutical firm AstraZeneca. The Philippine government, local government units or LGUs, private sector donors and AstraZeneca signed a memorandum of agreement on Thursday to secure additional doses of COVID vaccine as the country prepares for its immunization program this year. Let's listen in.
The demand for vaccines, especially coming from both LGUs and the private sector, is quite immense. And the Philippines definitely will not be left behind in this fight. We will be vaccinating our Filipino people, hopefully starting June, July. 17 million vaccines have been and will be signed today, procured. And this is a commitment that they will all be delivered in the year 2021.
There is light at the end of the tunnel. National recovery is within sight. As we bounce back and heal as one, I commend the business community and the LGUs for your ramping of support for our nation's fight against COVID-19.
We would like to assure our countrymen that the government's vaccine procurement efforts are science-based and are being carried out under the guidance of our vaccine expert panel. This will ensure that all the vaccines that we will be purchasing are safe, effective, and affordable.
Today, we are delighted to conclude 17 million doses, which can reach millions of Filipinos through the close collaboration between AstraZeneca, the Philippine government, local government units, and private sector donors. We are working closely with regulatory authorities to ensure that the COVID-19 vaccine lives up to the highest safety standards and its introduction complies with healthcare regulations in the Philippines. We're working with Philippine FDA on the preparations for a swift yet thorough science-led emergency use authorization review.
I'm extremely pleased that AstraZeneca, in partnership with so many local government units and so many members of the private sector, and with the support of the government of the Philippines, will be able to supply such a significant amount of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine later this year. The United Kingdom is doing all it can to ensure equitable access to, as Secretary Galvez put it, safe, effective, and affordable vaccines, which have been developed transparently. And today marks an important milestone towards achieving that here in the Philippines. I congratulate everyone in the room, everyone joining us on this incredible video wall behind us. I congratulate you all on your dedication to securing a successful conclusion to these negotiations.
That was His Excellency Ambassador Daniel Cruz, the UK ambassador to the Philippines. Now, back in November 2020, more than 30 members of the private sector also committed to donate 2.6 million COVID-19 vaccines from AstraZeneca. In the second wave of the donation, more than 300 private sector donors committed to shoulder the acquisition of more vaccines from the European pharmaceutical company. Now, vaccines manufactured by pharmaceutical giants Pfizer and Sinovac are expected to arrive in the country by February 20, according to National Policy Against COVID-19 Chief Implementer and Vaccine Czar, Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr. on Wednesday night. Meanwhile, Galvez said also that preparations of the logistical requirement for vaccine deployment are underway. It's expected to be ready by January 30, he added, to make sure the country is prepared for the arrival of the first batch of vaccines. Galvez said the government will conduct a series of inspections next week to ensure the country's preparedness for vaccine development. It'll also check the storage capabilities or capacities of the country's cold chain facilities for vaccines. Mr. Galvez said these facilities are located at the Research Institute for Tropical Medicine, or RITM, University of the Philippines, and San Lazaro Hospital. They will also check the cold chain facilities privately owned by pharmaceutical companies, Zwellig and Unilab. He also said the government's preparations for vaccine deployment include training of vaccinators, mobilization of security forces, and readying partner stakeholders. Galvez said COVID-19 jabs that require minus 70 degrees Celsius and minus 20 degrees Celsius temperatures, such as Pfizer and Moderna, will be stored in the country's major storage hubs in Metro Manila, Davao, and Cebu, while vaccines requiring 2 degrees Celsius to 8 degrees Celsius, such as Sinovac, Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca, and Novavax vaccines, can be deployed in the far-flung communities. Quezon City Mayor Joy Belmonte said she sees no need to impose new lockdowns even as the United Kingdom COVID-19 variant has been detected in one of its residents. Belmonte assured the city residents that they have already isolated the first patient confirmed to have been infected with the new COVID-19 variant. Belmonte said, quote, "When he left the Philippines on December 27, he tested negative. When he arrived in Dubai, he tested negative. When he left Dubai, there was no test. When he arrived in the Philippines, he tested positive. And when he tested positive, he was brought directly to our isolation facility, so he never even set foot in the community. She said the group who fetched him from the airport and brought him to the isolation facility were also immediately tested and isolated as well, including their driver. She added that they also have tested all health workers who attended to the patient at the isolation facility. Although the subject tested negative before his departure for Dubai, Belmonte said they're also testing his immediate family household. And as an additional precautionary measure, his family is also being closely monitored by the city health department. She said the person's female companion, when he went to Dubai, is also in isolation and is being retested, even though she already tested negative for the virus. Now, also this week, Vietnam suspended flights from countries with cases of new COVID-19 variants. The communist nation, which has won praise for its handling of the pandemic, said flights from the UK and South Africa would be affected first. The Health and Transport Ministries will later decide if flights from elsewhere need to be banned according to a Prime Minister's directive. The two new variants, which are potentially far more infectious versions of the virus, first emerged in the UK and South Africa. COVID cases in Britain have soared in recent weeks, forcing the government to impose tighter restrictions in a desperate attempt to curb infection rates. But Vietnam, with a population of 96 million, has recorded just 1,504 cases and 35 deaths, thanks to mass quarantines, extensive contact tracing, and strict controls on movement. And let's get the latest update from the island nation of Maldives. Joining us live is Steffi Diwan. Hello, Steffi.
Hi, Alma. Good afternoon. And to all the televiewers around the world. So here's the latest updates from the island nation of Maldives. The Indian High Commission on Thursday revealed that over 3,000 Maldivian patients had traveled to India to obtain critical medical care under exemptions in visa and travel regulations during the pandemic, despite India's border not being fully open. In addition to the special permissions for travel for Maldivian patients, the High Commission also noted that India also donated 5.5 tons of essential medicines to the island nation in March. Airlifted 6.3 tons of medicines from various Indian cities to Maldives in April and gifted 2,400 vials of BGC vaccines to address a shortfall in Maldives' national immunization program in December last year. Moreover, the neighboring country had also conducted several training courses for healthcare professionals and civil servants on COVID-19 mitigation, in addition to extending a postdoctoral fellowship in cardioelectrophysiology at SCTIMST to the top Maldivian cardiologist, Dr. Ali Shafiq. According to Indian High Commission, health is a time-tested pillar, bilateral partnership. The COVID-19 pandemic has strengthened, resolved, and accelerated our efforts in cooperation in the vital sector of the benefits of the people. In addition to the aforementioned aid, India also extended various grants and loans, including over $250 million as budgetary support to mitigate the economic impact of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, marking the largest single donor assistance extended to the island nation in history. And that's the quick update from Maldives. Back to you, Alma.
All right. Thank you very much for your updates there, Steffi. Stay safe, stay healthy. Have a great weekend.
Thank you so much, Alma. Reporting live from Maldives. This is Stephanie Juan, and we live in interesting times.
Meanwhile, two experts on an international mission to investigate the origins of COVID-19 in China are still in Singapore after testing positive for COVID antibodies, according to the World Health Organization. The World Health Organization said earlier that the international team of experts had landed in Wuhan for the long-delayed mission. But it later tweeted that two had yet to make it there. It said two scientists are still in #Singapore completing tests for #COVID-19, the UN health body said in a tweet. All team members had multiple negative PCR and antibody tests for COVID-19 in their home countries prior to traveling, it said. But it added that the team of more than a dozen experts had been tested again during a stopover in Singapore. WHO said all members were negative for PCR, which determines whether a person is currently infected with COVID-19. But 2 members had tested positive for the so-called IgM antibodies, which are usually the first antibodies produced by the immune system when a virus attacks. When IgM is detected, the subject could still be infected or may recently have recovered from a COVID-19 infection. WHO said the 2 were currently being retested for IgM as well as IgG antibodies, which generally appear a week or so after COVID-19 symptoms begin and indicate that you recently were infected with a virus. The WHO has for months been working to send a team of international experts, including epidemiologists and animal health specialists, to China to help probe the animal origin of the novel coronavirus pandemic and how the virus first crossed over to humans. The WHO says establishing the pathway of the virus from animals to humans is essential to preventing future outbreaks. Now, also this week, Indonesian President Joko Widodo became the first person in Indonesia to receive a COVID-19 vaccination in a televised inoculation. The president gets a jab developed by Chinese pharmaceutical firm Sinovac. Take a look. Also this week, some Malaysians reacted uneasily to a state of emergency that was declared Tuesday to fight a coronavirus surge that is overwhelming hospitals, that some critics charge as a bid by an unstable government to cling to power. It's the first time that Malaysia has declared a national state of emergency in over half a century. And Prime Minister Muhyiddin, in a televised address, confirmed that parliament would be suspended and elections would not take place for the time being.
Kes jangkitan COVID-19 semakin meningkat dan tidak menunjukkan tanda-tanda penurunan dalam masa terdekat. Oleh itu, kerajaan perlu mempunyai kuasa-kuasa tertentu bagi memastikan wabak ini dapat dibendung dengan lebih berkesan.
Saya rasa darurat ni tak ada kena-mengena dengan pandemik kot. Dia mungkin pasal agenda lain, politik mungkin. Itulah saya rasa.
Kira macam kena halau tak?
Tak halau. Saya tak halau. Tapi dengan cara baik, ambil gambar.
Nanti dia macam nanti akan jadi yang macam before, dia yang MCO before kita tak boleh keluar dah. So dia macam nak susahkan lagi kita lah, dari untuk cari mata pencarian, untuk makan pun semua memang menyusahkan lagi untuk kita.
In Thailand, health workers tackled a new wave of COVID-19, hopeful that the country's outbreak is slowing down. Since late December, the total number of cases in the country has doubled to more than 10,000. Let's take a look.
So since the new wave of COVID-19 outbreak in Bangkok, we are receiving like much more people from our regular number. So we have to start it to have like a quota for each day. Right now our quota is 400 people per day. And we divided the testing into doing swab for RT-PCR and also rapid test from finger prick blood. So in the beginning of the outbreak, since our first wave in Thailand, we started off with no negative pressure room, but just we were wearing just PPE in a really hot climate. But after that, we were kind enough to had a donation from private sectors. We got donated this negative pressure room, so the staffs would not have to be wearing PPE. In this past few days, we are starting to see, a stable number of people infected per day, like 100, 200 per day. So hopefully, it would stay like that and the number would come down, hopefully in this few weeks.
Since late December, the total number of cases in the country has doubled to more than 10,000. Thailand is expected to begin vaccinations in February. Authorities have introduced a mixture of restrictions, but have been reluctant to enforce a full lockdown. The Urban Institute for Disease Prevention and Control in Bangkok has been transformed into a testing center using negative pressure rooms to protect the health workers. The facility processes about 1,000 specimens per day, including samples from walk-ins, tests, and hotel quarantine. In other news, rescuers have retrieved more debris from the Indonesian plane crash, including large fuselage and a wheel, as they continue to hunt for the cockpit voice recorder, the second black box that could supply key clues as to why the Sriwijaya Air Boeing 737 plummeted shortly after takeoff. Take a look.
Paket yang kita terima siang ini kami akan serahkan kepada tim KNKT dan tim DBI untuk memeriksa material yang akan diserahkan. Harapan kita adalah isi air juga kita bisa mendapatkan. Namun demikian tidak konsentrasi kepada satu itu. Itu dilakukan secara simultan karena pencarian terhadap korban itu juga kita fokuskan ke situ. Selain puing-puing yang masih bisa kita angkat. Jadi lapangan para penyelam-penyelam dalam kondisi cuaca yang kurang begitu bersahabat, namun demikian masih mampu untuk bisa mendapatkan objek-objek pencarian. Jadi sekali lagi terima kasih atas penyerahan ini. Selanjutnya nanti akan ditindaklanjuti oleh KNKT. Demikian.
The deadly plane crash off Jakarta is a blow to Indonesia's progress in improving a dreadful air safety record that once saw its carriers banned from European and U.S. airspace, according to analysts. The vast archipelago is one of the world's fastest-growing aviation markets, but has long been notorious for a poor safety culture, ill-maintained runways, remote airstrips, and a lack of trained pilots. Accidents increased as demand for air travel exploded among the growing middle class. But in recent years, there had been signs of improvement. After determined efforts to overhaul the sector, tragedy slowed. Before the weekend, there had not been a major commercial crash where the airline appeared mainly at fault for over 5 years. But on Saturday, a Sriwijaya Air Boeing passenger jet carrying 62 people plunged into the sea just minutes after takeoff from the capital, Jakarta. It's not yet clear what caused the crash. Divers have salvaged one of the crucial black boxes which contains flight data, but are still hunting for the cockpit voice recorder, and data has yet to be analyzed. However, analysts say bad weather, pilot error, poor maintenance, or mechanical failure could be among the factors in the crash of the 26-year-old Boeing 737-500. ASEAN in Focus will be right back. Stay tuned.
Happy Peeps! Abangan niyo po palagi ang Happy Time dito sa Net25 every 12 noon.
Happy Time! Happy Time! Balang araw, magkikita-kita tayo! At sinisiguro ko sa inyo, yung inuupuan nyo, mauupuan ko din! O, diba remember nung nakaraang linggo? Ayaw nila sa aking tatlo, di kinausap ko nga yung may-ari.
Panibagong set of contenders ang sasabak sa hamon ng TNG stage for a once-in-a-lifetime chance to reach their dreams. Dito lang yan sa Taakisan ng Galing Part 2 Dance Edition.
Now, during the week, we were also able to interview Mr. Natapanu Nopakun, the deputy spokesman of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Thailand, and he gave us an update on travel restrictions and the coronavirus situation there. Here's an excerpt. Let's listen in.
Has the government also responded via travel restrictions from countries with the new COVID strain or variant?
Yes, so for example, from the UK, there's a new strain, but we have not barred entry from travel from the UK to Thailand because we have the state quarantine system that's been in place for a long time. And since we have that system, anyone traveling from the UK or from other countries would have to be in the quarantine system anyways from the beginning. So we have not barred travel, but we have instructed our officials to be more rigid in terms of the documentation. And they can actually ask for more documents, additional documents, from those traveling from the UK. Any nationality person, British or non-British, non-UK, traveling from the UK, our embassy can ask for additional documentation, or they can sort of like delay the issuance of the certificate for entry because they have to be extra careful, but not barring or prohibiting travel from the UK. More stringent measures, because I think scientifically we haven't proven yet that the new strain is how different, how more severe it is, and things like that. It's just a new strain, but we're being careful. All of this, of course, without any discrimination for any travelers.
Many travelers now are complaining of repeated COVID tests departing from and arriving at a destination. Does Thailand require a negative result from inbound passengers and another test upon arrival in Thailand?
The documentation for entry into Thailand is kind of rigid, because I think that's what we focus on. So the COVID test, 72-hour COVID-free document that's required, of course, for entering Thailand. We also have the Fit to Fly document. That's another one, but it's less important than the COVID-free 72 hours. So that's required for entering Thailand, because sometimes what we found was that people are asymptomatic, and then if you don't have all these reassurances, that it might just come up and affect Thailand. And after that documentation, people have to come into the required quarantine system. Upon arrival, we have a test at the airport, and then during quarantine, we have one or two more tests. So actually, to answer you, I think some people might see it as kind of repetitive or There's like so many tests going on, but I think that's necessary for us to be 100% sure, because at the moment there is still no sort of like no framework that would certify the different types of testing globally. You see, so for example, if I travel from some country across the globe, which, for example, might be sorry to say, but like a developing or underdeveloped country, But so how can Thailand be sure that the COVID-free test, 72-hour COVID-free test you took in that country is of standard, right? So if I travel from a less developed country, for example, somewhere far away, and I do that test, and then the Thai embassy grants me the certificate of entry, that's fine, okay, but just to enter, right? But how can I be sure that that medical facility in that XXX particular country is of standard in terms of COVID-free testing? So that's one thing. But anyways, they allow me to enter, for example, hypothetically. So I'm allowed to enter with the certificate of entry with that thing. And then when I come to Thailand, to be sure, we have our own test at the, for foreign diplomats, we tend to have them at the airport and have them wait for the result. So even for non-diplomats, for ordinary public, the general public, we have to do that as well. So aside from the testing at within the quarantine system, that makes us sure. And if that person or myself is found to be COVID positive while I'm in the quarantine system, of course I won't affect anyone because I'm in the hotel in the state system, and I can be sent directly to the hospital quarantine. So it's like another layer for reassurance because of the uncertainties that we have in public health standards around the world, frankly speaking. And I think that's necessary because every country has different types of health standards, right? Even today, it's even more relevant. So I'm not saying that Thailand has a good public health standard compared to other countries. Other countries might be better than us, but other countries might still be developing in terms of health standards. So we have to be double, triple sure that these documents are valid, and even though the documents are valid from whatever particular country, the health standards there as well have to be double checked here in Thailand. And even here in Thailand, we have to be double checking ourselves as well. So after one test, sometimes there's like a false positive. So even though one facility in Thailand says it's positive, when they double check again, it turns out to be negative. So we have to be double checking ourselves here as well. So I think that's the reason behind why there's this procedure. It might sound repetitive, but it's necessary for us. And I hope that everyone traveling to Thailand will understand this to keep our numbers low as they are now compared to other countries, even though it's like 10,000 now, but still kind of okay. I think within the ASEAN region for our population, for the size of our population, I think it's not that high yet. We have the percentage. I spoke about the percentage the other day on like the analytical side of it, that most infections now in Thailand are local transmission, more than those coming from abroad. So we have to keep a tab on that.
Spike in cases recurred only in the middle of December, right? If I'm not mistaken. How has Thailand maintained a comparatively low spread of the virus? Is it via mass testing, contact tracing apps, mass communications? How did you do it?
Sure. So the new wave, of course, was scary for all of us in Thailand. So I think we used the same kind of mentality since the one last year. We did not do mass testing like other countries. We did active case finding, meaning like specific areas. So, for example, if there's a known cluster found in a cockfighting area or a boxing arena, we go there, or in a particular district, in a particular province, and things like that. So we sort of like use the targeted approach, not the mass testing approach. And it's been proven in Thailand that it's kind of effective and more cost effective as well, rather than mass testing. Still, of course, there have been some cases that were not found through active case finding. It just popped up somewhere. So that remains to be worked on. And aside from active case finding, we also use the application, yes, as you mentioned. So the application that we are promoting is called More Shana. Mo means doctor, and then Shana means win. So More Shana is doctors win. I mean, well, we're all together and we should all win and then listen to the doctor. So More Shana application is encouraged for everyone to download in Thailand. There has been like around 5 million plus downloads already, and we hope for more. But basically, it has helped us keep the numbers, not only in terms of like checking in a place, a venue, so authorities can track, if you went to a venue that was found infected, not only in tracking where people checked in, but also it warns people on the mobile phone as well. Meaning that when you download it, they'll ask you some questions on your risk, to analyze how at risk you are. For example, if you went here, if you travel by public transportation and stuff like that, and then since the smartphone has GPS and you carry it around, it'll have the GPS and Bluetooth technology to record that you travel to whatever particular place, and if by chance you travel with your smartphone with the application and you go to an area which is known to be an infected area, it'll warn you on the cell phone not to go there, or to go see the health authorities if you went there. Then things like that. So it's a combination of a lot of schemes that will help people. So I think the awareness is still there in Thailand. It was, as I mentioned, it was like around 500 per day for around 2 days, I think. But the rest of the days, it was 200 new infections per day, 100. And now it's been 200 for a while per day, and hoping it'll be 100 plus per day. So still in like 365 days, not one whole year, but 363 days, 363 days since our first case in January last year until January this year, making it 363 days. It marked the 10,000 per person in Thailand. So we reached 10,000 persons infected in 363 days. But in that number, around 5,000 have already been treated and recovered and discharged. So around 4,000 plus are still in treatment in Thailand to date. And the good thing is the low number of deaths right now. We still stand at 67 deaths until today.
Mm-hmm. Did the government partner with a private firm to provide app tracking and COVID location-specific advice for Thai citizens?
Yes. We had actually there are around 4 applications for different purposes, but the main one is Moshana, as I mentioned. There are others for foreign visitors in particular, with the kind of field information that's particularly relevant to them, and then there are others as well. But the main one we use now is Moshana. But yes, we collaborated with private sector, a number actually, dozens of private sector people in the tech industry, in the medical, all kinds of industries to help develop this. But the main agency doing it, of course, is the Ministry of Digital Economy. We have a ministry by that name.
Okay. Which government agency heads the coronavirus response in Thailand? Here in the Philippines, we have the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases, or IATF, in Thailand, which heads the coronavirus response.
Okay, so we set up the central agency, which is the CCSA, the Center for COVID Situation Administration. The Prime Minister is the chair, and under that, the main agencies are Department of Disease Control of the Health Ministry, and there's also the Interior Ministry, which under the Interior Ministry, there's the Disaster Prevention and Mitigation Department. So like for national response, that national disaster. So it's a combination of many agencies in Thailand.
Do you have any message for us? Thank you for your time, sir. Do you have any message for us listening to you right now here in the Philippines and around the ASEAN region, around the world?
Sure. So for Thailand, we are kind of in this new wave. We hope that we will be able to stop the new wave. We don't want to be too confident, but then we really want to stop this. We hope that if your country in ASEAN or around the world is facing a new wave, a second wave, if you've passed it already or not, we hope you the very best and more power to help solve it within your country. And of course, international and regional collaboration is going on within the ASEAN region and internationally as well, bilaterally as well. In Thailand, we've assisted some countries, less developed countries, in terms of equipment as well. And I'm sure that many countries are exchanging information, and the people in various countries are giving encouragement and inspiration among each other as well. So my message is that please continue on. Please have more power. Don't lose faith in the power of our unity of humankind. I mean, we face challenges in different times. Our new wave is now. Yours might have been last year already, or still, increasing this year and everything. But please continue to have faith and give hope and inspiration to your neighbors in the ASEAN region and around the world. And hopefully this year, let's stave off and destroy COVID and stop COVID once and for all together.
Hopefully, with continued vigilance and cooperation among ASEAN nations, we could better lower the coronavirus spread and distribute the vaccines, as you say. Thank you very much, sir, for your time. I know that you're a very busy man, and yet you gave us this time to have this interview. Thank you very much, Mr. Natapanu.
Thank you. Thank you. Salamat, mabuhay, and have a nice day. More power.
And staying in Thailand, a 3-month-old baby has tested positive for COVID-19. Joining us live from Bangkok, here is Cristel Dimarukot from our Thailand Bureau. Hello, Cristel. How are you doing?
Hello, Alma. I'm good. Good afternoon to you, as well as to all our viewers. Here are the latest updates here in Thailand. Health officials expressed their concerns over a rise in cluster infections among family members, friends, and colleagues in workplace after a 3-month-old baby in Bangbon area of Bangkok has tested positive for COVID-19, and it was said to be acquired after coming in contact with an infected family member. Director General of the Institute for the Prevention and Control of Urban Disease, Dr. Vicharn Pawan, stated that the baby's mother and her 7-year-old son were also infected by a friend who had recently visited the family and shared a meal. The friend has visited them and later reported symptoms of loss of smell and tested positive for COVID-19 at a local hospital. Vicharn also said that in Thailand's new wave of COVID-19 infection, 49% of the cases in Bangkok are asymptomatic, while only 29% of cases in Bangkok were asymptomatic in the first outbreak. He also added, Alma, that many cluster infections are related to the central shrimp market in Samut Sakhon province and entertainment venues in Pinklau, Thonburi, and Bangna. And that's the latest news here in Thailand. Back to you, Alma.
All right. Thank you very much, Cristel, for your updates there. 3-month-old baby. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay, so, yeah, we'll be waiting for an update on that developing story. Thank you very much, Cristel, and you have a great weekend.
Okay, thank you. Reporting live from Bangkok, this is Cristel Dimarukot. We live in interesting times.
And ASEAN in Focus, we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Kuya, meron akong tanong. Ba't ba tayo umalis ng Olvida? Bakit ayaw na ayaw mong bumalik tayo dito? Si Ate Reyna ba ang punot dulo?
Si tatay. Siya ang punot dulo ng lahat.
Okay ka lang ba? Parang matamlay ka yata.
Na-expose yan sa masamang elemento.
Ha? Baka COVID.
Nako, mas masahol pa sa COVID. Oy, Ned, bantayan mo nga yung anak ko.
Miss Reyna, may donation na naman daw.
Actually, kaming dalawa, Doc.
Kayong dalawa talaga, perfect couple. Kailan ang kasal?
Ang daigdig ko'y ikaw. Tuwing Sabado, ika-8 ng gabi. Dito lamang sa Net 25.
Welcome back. A Cambodian court resumed hearings of a mass trial of around 150 Cambodian opposition figures, despite the UN raising concerns that the proceedings are politically motivated and violated due process. The case is linked to attempts by exiled opposition figurehead Sam Rainsy to return to Cambodia in 2019 from France, where he has lived since 2015, to avoid jail for convictions that he says are bogus. Let's take a look.
As a Democrat, in a society that we call a democracy, I have the right to express my opinions, to express political opinions, but I'm being persecuted. I'm being prosecuted and persecuted. But I'm not afraid of this regime. Mr. Hun Sen is not the owner of my life. God is the owner of my life. And he will not intimidate me with these charges. I will face them. And because they're sham, they're not real charges.
Now, Prime Minister Hun Sen is one of the world's longest-serving leaders, maintaining a 35-year grip on power with methods that include jailing political opponents and activists. Many of the accused in Thursday's trial have connections to Rainsie's Cambodia National Rescue Party, which a court dissolved in November 2017, while others are human rights activists. Many defendants have fled the country fearing arrest. After 2 hours, the judge split the case in two, following lawyers' requests for more time to prepare. Some defendants sought permission to choose their own legal representation rather than use ones appointed by the court. Hearings are expected to resume in January and March. In other news, the U.S. Commerce Department added China's state oil giant CNOOC to its blacklist over what it called belligerent actions in the disputed South China Sea. China's reckless and belligerent actions in the South China Sea and its aggressive push to acquire sensitive intellectual property and technology for its militarization efforts are a threat to U.S. national security and the security of the international community. That is according to Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross in a statement. CNOOC acts as a bully for the People's Liberation Army to intimidate China's borders, and the Chinese military continues to benefit from government civil-military fusion policies for malign purposes. The territorial dispute has festered for years, with Beijing ignoring U.S. protests as it built a series of artificial islands to expand its military and commercial reach in the region that is believed to have valuable oil and gas deposits. China claims nearly all of the South China Sea, including the Spratly Islands through Taiwan, though Taiwan, the Philippines, Brunei, Malaysia, and Vietnam all claim parts of it. The move was the latest in escalating sanctions against the firm that prompted S&P Dow Jones indices to delist the company late Wednesday. It also reflects outgoing President Trump's flurry of last-minute pressure on Beijing as his days in office wind down following 4 years of aggressive diplomatic and trade policies against the rival economic power. Meanwhile, Fitch Ratings retained the Philippines investment grade credit rating of BBB with stable outlook. Take a look.
The cabinet also learned last night that credit rating agency Fitch Ratings affirms its BBB rating for the Philippines and stable outlook for its economy, as it expects us to continue bouncing back this year due to our vaccination program. Due in part to our vaccination program. Ang mga ito po ay mga overview ng mga tinalakay sa gabinete sa cabinet meeting kagabi. Marami pong mga detalye ang mga ahensya na nakatutok sa mga agenda items na ito, and we will work with the concerned agencies to flesh out these details in the days to come. Mga kababayan, sa patuloy natin na pakikipagbuno sa pandemya, mga sakuna at iba pa, sa pagharap natin sa mga parating pa na mga hamon at pagsubok, kasali na dyan ang kagutuman. Kailangan nating magtulungan.
Now, Fitch said it expects Philippine economic activity to continue to recover in the coming quarters and project GDP to expand by 6.9% and 8% in 2021 and 2022, respectively. New daily record COVID cases have been declining in recent months, according to Fitch, reflecting an effective government response to the crisis and reducing the risk of renewed lockdowns. Fitch said in its website that the authorities have also engaged in multilateral initiatives and with several pharmaceutical companies to secure vaccines, with a rollout expected to start in May this year. The potential for a delay poses downside risk to the growth forecast, according to Fitch, while an effective vaccine rollout could result in a faster than expected recovery in growth. Meanwhile, Thailand's king has visited prisons, sweeping floors alongside his official consort in the latest round of a charm offensive following unprecedented criticism of the monarchy during street protests. The palace has stepped up public appearances in recent months as the student-led movement has made calls for reforms to the monarchy, considered a taboo subject in Thailand. Images released by the palace showed King Maha Vajiralongkorn and his consort, 35-year-old Seninat Wang Vajirapakdi, visiting different prisons over the past 2 months, dressed in jeans and polo shirts. The king has appointed Seninat in a project overseeing the health care of prison inmates, an expansion to her public portfolio after a dramatic change in her fortunes over the past year and a half. Seninat was named consort in July 2019, the first such appointment in almost a century, but was stripped of ranks and titles 3 months later, accused of disloyalty and ambition to match the position of the king's wife, Queen Sutida. Last December, Seninat made an unexpected comeback. The king reinstated her titles along with a public declaration that she wasn't tarnished anymore. On Monday, the Royal Gazette announced her new public duties as a deputy advisor on a committee set up by the king focusing on prison health care. Women's badminton world number 1 Tai Tzu-Ying breezed into the quarterfinals of the Thailand Open on Thursday, sweeping aside South Korea's Kim Ga-gyung 21-16, 21-10 in less than half an hour. Take a look. The 26-year-old's victory came as the Badminton World Federation declared the tournament safe to continue following the latest round of COVID-19 testing. It has been a while since the last tournament, and this is the same for everyone, so these first new matches are not easy, admitted Tai after overcoming the 17th-ranked Kim. I felt better today and had less unforced errors, he said. Tai is keeping back-to-back titles 10 months apart after winning the All England Championship on her last tournament appearance in March before the coronavirus shutdown. The Taiwanese player will next face Canada's 8th seed Michelle Lee for a place in the semifinals. World number 10 Lee fought back after dropping the first game against another South Korean, Sung Ji-yoon, before prevailing 15-21, 21-15, 21-14. Former world number 1 Saina Nehwal did not fare as well when she went up against Thai player Busananggong Bamrongpan, who managed to stay on top after a tight first game 21-23, 21-13, 21-16. The Indian star was among three other athletes who tested positive Tuesday but were allowed to play because their infections were last year. Busanan ranked 12 and women's single will go up against Denmark's Mia Blichfeldt in the quarterfinals. And that is the latest news in the Southeast Asian nations. Stay updated about the ASEAN region. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.